Hey, what is up, everybody? It is your boy Luis Martinez, collaborator of the San Diego International Latino Film Festival here in its 27th year. Obviously, this is the time of year when we would be hanging out, drinking Stella Ariolas in the artist tent with a lot of directors from all over the world and having fun watching each other's movies, collaborating, connecting. But due to the world circumstances we are in, we have virtualized the festival. And we are bringing the movies directly to you in the comfort of your own living room, laptop, iPhone, iPad, etc. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with the director and the subject of one of the documentaries that I was able to screen this year called DEAR HOMELAND. So I want to welcome on Claudia and Diana to the stream today to talk about the documentary and what it was like to make that. So how you guys doing?
Hello.
Hola, Luis.
Hola, Diana. Hola, Claudia. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Where are you guys joining us today from?
I am in Berkeley, California.
Okay. How about you, Diana?
And we are, I am in my mother's home in Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, just al otro lado de la línea.
Al otro lado de la línea. Well, let's start there because usually I just have the director on, but we have the director and the subject of the documentary on. So it's not unironic that you are now in the place that you haven't been able to get to for so many years. What is that feeling like? That freedom that just a little plastic piece of paper has afforded you?
It's such a, it's a privilege, right? Now I can just go back and forth whenever I want to, and it's strange. I have to be honest. Because for many years, just imagining that I would cross over meant, brought up so many emotions, so many. That now that I can do that, it's like, wow, it still sometimes doesn't sink in. Como que no me la creo todavía. A veces mi hermano me dice, ¿ya te la crees? Justo ayer le decía a mi mamá, just yesterday I said, man, I'm in Mexico. It's sometimes I forget, and it's like, it was just too many years, it was 16 years. And I know it's not even compared to what other people have, been away for. But
16 years?
16 years. But another thing I wanted to say is like, it's also kind of because now sometimes when I walk across to go to El Paso, sometimes I see immigrants waiting, and a lot of people from Honduras and Central America just waiting right there on the middle of the bridge, trying to convince the immigration officers que los dejen pasar, or just waiting, to see if anybody would hear their case. And so it's strange. It's like I have mixed feelings about it. Obviously, I'm extremely happy to be here, and yet I am so much aware of what, like the muy bizarro, Luis, es lo que te puedo decir. Pero bueno, por el momento disfrutando mi familia, while I can. So,
no te despegas de tu mamá ahora. Ahí, cerquita.
Sí.
Not to skip ahead, but one of the most emotional moments of the film is when you walk across the border and you're almost like it looks like you're overwhelmed by the sights and the sound of Mexico. Like I almost expected you to be like, oh, let me stop and get a taco real quick right here. Like you couldn't wait to just feel and sense everything. And that was, how long ago was that?
That was November 24th, Claudia's birthday. I crossed that bridge on Claudia's birthday.
Yeah.
We spent her. ¿Puedo decir tus años? ¿Puedo decir tu edad? ¿O no?
Of course. We crossing the bridge.
Sí, así se convirtió en una cuarentona, mi nena. Pero todo bien, yo también ya me estoy acercando a los 40. Somos cuarentonas en cuarentena, Luis.
Yeah.
Cuarentonas en cuarentena. Yo también soy cuarentón también.
Con mucho orgullo.
No hay problema. Hay que ganarse las arrugas, ¿no?
Claro. Sí. Y las canas.
Y las canas también. Claudia, when you're, one of the things that I noticed when I started to just do a little research about you is that you started off learning architecture in Medellin, right? And I often talk about with directors about things that they did in their previous life. For example, I'm a director, but I used to manage a customer service center. So I used to manage people day and night, talk to people, train people.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was making me a better director because I was learning how to deal with people. Do you feel that background, that technical background of like building things on top of each other, sort of contributed to your skill as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I think definitely architecture helped me a lot. I guess in the organizing, building things, more in the, what is it? Like in the aesthetics of it, or like the artistic part of architecture, I think, and the sense of places, maybe I can say, if I'm not blabbling too much, but I think all that background in spaces, and I don't know, this sensing the spaces, and then photographing spaces, and then filming spaces, I think gives me a lot of tools. And obviously it's like trained as an architect is a lot of discipline that you build. And I guess it gave me, I think, a little bit of discipline and kind of like going until I have something done. So I would say that, yeah, sure. I think that training definitely had helped. Yeah.
How did you guys connect with each other? How did you gravitate into each other's sort of universe where this happened?
I knew about Diana from we were living in the same neighborhood. It's kind of like the Latino neighborhood in San Francisco. And I was living there already when I think Diana arrived in the city. And by then, this neighborhood was really alive in terms of like music and arts in the Latino community, and like immigrants in general. It was like a bubbling neighborhood of all these things. So all these musicians were playing around the neighborhood in cafes or restaurants or like art events and stuff. So I heard about Diana, I think just from being in the neighborhood. And one time I saw her at the Roosevelt Tamale Parlor because she worked there singing every weekend or something like that for years. And I saw her there once, but we didn't kind of like become closer until like recently when she invited me to participate collaborate with her in a show that she was going to do with the YBCA, which is an arts organization here in San Francisco. And I think that we started to become closer then, and then is when all this story happened with Dear Homeland.
I think you're muted, Luis.
Sorry about that. No, sorry about that. Was it just very organic, just that it just led into just one moment you were talking to each other and we should tell a story here? Or Diana, did you always sort of want to tell your story too? Was it a combination of both of you guys sort of? No?
No. O sea, no, I mean, I'm a performer, but the more I know about myself, I'm also very shy. Like I not, maybe shy is not the word, but I'm reservada, no? Como que I'm not, and so I would have never thought, oh, let's make, a documentary out of my story. Who do I find? I did have a conversation with Claudia, however, in preparation, or this is when I invited her to be a part of this show that she's talking about with the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. It was kind of a big production, and I thought, oh, it would be so lovely to finally work together. We've known each other for so many years. I've always admired and loved, actually what enamored me about Claudia was her collages, her animations. She does like stop motion animation, and I'm a complete amateur at it, but I love it. I'm a sucker for animation, stop motion animation. And I remember that's like, I fell in love with her and I'm like, I want to collaborate with this woman. Anyway, I invited her to collaborate on this show. And we're just talking, and I remember telling her my story, and yes, and my green card, I'm waiting for my green card, 1 more year, 2 more years, 3 more years, blah, blah, blah. And, but what I want to do when I get it and I'm able to go back, I'm going to do a road trip. Just so that I have time to process what's going to be about to happen when I get my green card and then I'm able to go. You know, I kind of want it to be this spiritual thing where I'm preparing to go back to my homeland, and I want to cross that bridge by foot. You know, I don't want to fly there. I just want to make it as smooth as possible, and I want to cross that bridge and be able to absorb every feeling, every sight of me going back home. And Claudia said, I want to film that. And I said, okay. And I didn't know what I was getting into, right? Because it's, I mean, and she probably didn't either, ¿verdad, Claudia?
No.
Because it's, yeah. And so she followed me since then, ever since. You know, this was December 2016 when we had that conversation. And I think actually she started filming me during that show that we collaborated on. And so, yeah, she filmed me for a long time, and we went to all the, she really just became, como dice ella, la mosquita, o el mosquito en el oído. And that's how it happened. I really never thought, you know, to be honest, Luis, like I never really thought my story, like not to diminish individual stories, right? But like, because I've known so many stories through my work in activism and in you know, just as a performer too, and being immersed with organizations that work towards, you know, advocating for immigrant rights. I know so many more other stories of struggle and that maybe are even more exciting, you know, to maybe portray in a documentary. And so I always thought, like, you know, what like, what's my story? You know, like, it didn't feel like worthy of being in a documentary, but.
Do you think that's partially just because you had been living the story for 15 years, and so it didn't seem like it was more normal to you than it would seem to somebody looking at it from outside, though, right?
Perhaps, and I guess, I mean, it almost feels wrong to say that too, because I understand the value now of my work and of my story, and understanding the value of my story also means that I honor the value of each individual immigrant story. We don't have to do great things. We don't have to be in front of a big audience or achieve, you know, amazing things to be worthy of appreciate or of we're valuable no matter what, right? And now I'm even thinking, like, and I might be contradicting myself, but I think. Actually, if anything, if every immigrant that resides in the United States had their own documentary, maybe this country would be a different country, you know, because there are so many, it's such a huge spectrum. And if all of our stories were told, and I'm not even just talking about immigrants, if all of the human stories were told, I think we would be a different country. I think that's why we're so divided right now, because we're not taking the time to really know what you are about. Tú, Luis, ¿de qué se trata, Luis? ¿Sabes? And so anyway, I think that's why now I'm extremely grateful that Claudia and KQED and all the people that funded this documentary, I'm so grateful for that, because you really never know either, you know, what effects telling a story is going to have on somebody, even if it has a big impact on one person. Nos damos por bien servidas, ¿sabes? Entonces, there's my 2 cents, or my many cents.
Bien dicho. One follow-up to that, because you said you were shy, but which also contradicts itself with being a performer. In some of the performance footage that Claudia captured, it seems that you, at a moment, either stutter a little bit, or the moment overwhelms you, or you sort of you have these pauses in your performance where you know, is that being shy? Is that you kind of feeling the moment and having it overwhelm you a little bit? Just because I noticed it while watching the doc, or is that kind of like a pacing that sort of puts you into the moment of the performance that you're giving?
Yeah, and actually maybe the word is not shy, Luis, it's maybe introspective, right? And so for me, and I guess I'm kind of rewinding, you know, of why I said shy and why, like, the idea of having a camera. I guess I've never been camera, you know, I get shy in front of cameras, and so I'm introspective. You don't see a lot of selfies on my social media, for example, you know, that kind of thing where I'm more like, but I guess what you're relating to in the documentary, yeah, I get emotional in my shows, and actually, you know, during my show. So I guess, you know, and many performers and artists will not let me lie. Like, it's like we get into another realm. When we're on stage, you know, it's like I'm all of a sudden in a different state of being. And a lot of the times, you know, the content of my songs can be emotional, and especially because I am also reacting to the times. And I know that for some of the things that you see on the documentary, those were performances. We were in the middle of La Caravana de Migrantes, of learning about these kids, you know, being detained and being in cages. We were in the middle of I think also the migrant caravan in Eastern Europe too. And so
there's
a lot of those
uncertainty with DACA as well, like what was going on with DACA kids. It was there was a lot of, Trump had just gotten elected as well, so there was a lot happening.
Yeah, and so I think that's where the hesitations or like the emotions come, and also because it's like having a microphone in front of your mouth, you know, and speaking to so many people, it can be, it's such a big responsibility. It's easy for me to stutter, you know.
No, and I wasn't trying to say that as like a critique, but I just I felt like sometimes like you would take a moment to like gather yourself, and you would, you know, maybe like repeat a line or something like that, and it brought us really into your, you know, you as a performer and just kind of absorbing that moment. I have a question for Claudia. When you're doing a documentary about an artist, a performer, or something like that, I purposely try not to learn anything about the movie before I hit play, so I can just absorb it. But you did a great job of balancing her music with the story, where you could have had a tendency to sort of, you know, lean too much on, well, she's a great performer, we can just have her, you know, have all these little pieces of her and just make it like one big like music video. But how conscious of you are? I mean, I saw you in that last scene where you had the second camera guy, and then we could see you in the other angle.
You got
it. I caught you. Oh, you know, you're not gonna get past me. But how conscious of you are you when your subject is a performer and a musician, to balance the story arc with the music?
Well, specifically with this one, I think both kind of like are the same being. I think the beauty with Diana's story is that she tells her story through her music. So what I wanted to do from the beginning, and when you say that, I feel it as a compliment, because from the very beginning I wanted to kind of like go from her music to and her life, and in like weave these two things together till the end. So I got lucky with this, or I was looking for this, because one of the things that I love the most about this story is telling the story through music, without getting to what you say, just having her singing, but kind of like responding, let's say, like responding what's happening with her life with music, or informing what's happening in her life with the music that she sings. So it's kind of like I wanted to intertwine those two worlds that are also for me, as a filmmaker, a very interesting question that I have with my storytelling, and it's how do you weave what people have in their subconscious with what people is actually living in reality. And what I feel with music is a lot coming from that, not from like it's inspired in reality, but it comes from within yourself. So it's kind of like me looking for that thread that comes from the subconscious, and weave and sew it with the thread that comes from reality, and kind of like mix both worlds.
because you're threading that with her story, the music, but also the reality of the time that we're living in too.
Right.
So that's the third element, I guess, that, you know, it's her life, it's her music, but it's also the time that we're living in.
Right.
All right, we're live with Claudia Escobar and Diana from the documentary Dear Homeland, and I'm going to catch up on some comments here from people that are watching at home. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Leave a comment, leave a question for this director and for this musician. Don Imperioli says Altagracia is in the house. All right. And then he says Denim Gameros espectacular. Dan is all over it. Claudia Escobar, I would like to treat you to a bottle of your favorite libation, pero se la compartes a Gameros. Okay.
Claro que sí.
All right. And then we have a comment from Maite Asco.
Oh, my Bay Area family.
All right. Claudia Escobar, Claudita.
Te quiero, Maite.
Del otro lado del
También
puente.
extraño. Oye, bien latinosos acá.
Tremenda desmadre in the comment section. Okay, Altagracia y Gameros. Que se avienten una canción, maybe at the end. Well, that's right. Hold on, we have another one. Qué nota verte, Claudia. Lo mejor es que no.
Pipe, no puede ser. Que eso es tan bonito.
And then one other one, Claudia, ¿comiste tacos en Ciudad Juárez? That's a good question.
Claro,
Claudia.
claro. ¿Cómo no? ¿Cómo no?
Yeah. Después una bandejita paisa después, ¿no?
No, bandejita paisa sí, no como Juárez.
Diana, one of the things that I sort of talk a lot about in terms when it comes to immigration is in the United States is even within Latin families, there's often sections of the family that were born outside of the U.S. and sections of the family that were either nationalized or that, you know, were born, you know, a brother and sister that were born on different sides of an imaginary line that can have different respects. There's also, unfortunately, factions of Latino families and Latinos in general in parts of the U.S. that have this let me shut the door behind me mentality where once they are in, they just sort of, well, I'm good. Let me just go ahead and shut this door behind me. How do you deal with that when you either deal with it in real life or in response to your music and stuff like that?
How do I deal with?
Or how does that make you feel, like just that thought process that Latinos that sometimes can be so blind to like what even inside their own families are going through, or just sort of have this idea, well, if I'm assimilated, why can't you just assimilate? Why can't you do things the right way?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we all have, you know, such different experiences, and even I think it also depends on where you live, right? Like I have like on where your family members live, and maybe what you even like do for a living, like what your network is, what your bubble is, unfortunately, right? And like that's kind of like what I'm talking about, and like the importance of conversation and of getting to know your family members, right? Like and it actually has happened to me where like I'm still unsure of like one of my family members, I'm still unsure of her position politically. And to me, you know, I'm gonna love this person, this family member. However, it does affect me in a you know, sort of in a way like that like even to think that this person could have voted you know, for Trump, for example, and you know, and I mean, and it's strange because like you wouldn't want that to affect your relationship with a family member. However, I am aware that there are differences because of how we, you know, how we evolved in this country, and I'm trying to do my best to still be of, you know, to still lend an ear and to still hear whatever stories, you know, and whatever stories there are. Anything that will prevent us from dividing ourselves, you know, the more I see how things are happening, you know, on social media or politically or just even in our own communities, I'm thinking this is really the time where, if anything, I need to call this family member right now and say like, hey, you know, like, let's talk, you know, but in a humane way. And I don't know if that answers your question. but that, I guess that's what comes to my mind, to know that even within our own family systems, our experiences are so different, right?
Well, yeah, people are going to be sort of defined by how they view some things, you know, obviously by their own personal experiences. But it's funny that that dichotomy exists within families. It's not like just there's a group here, there's a group here, but it could be your cousin, your nephew, somebody that doesn't understand that they have family. Well, from my personal perspective, is I've had family members that are very pro-Trump, but they have also a privilege of having been born in the US, so they don't have anything to be afraid of. And they look at people that have the issue and they're like, well, I'm pro-Trump, but you can't, I would respect you if you had that ideal, if you had at least lived through some of the issues that your people inside of your family have had. So when if you're actively voting or campaigning for somebody that wishes to do your direct, not just your Latino family or your Latinx family, but your physical blood family bad, then I just kind of, I mean, it makes me sad to know about people like that, but that's kind of the point that I was bringing up.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't mean to pause the conversation there. That make you think.
It's so good. I mean, it's such a, and you know what, but it is good that you pointed out, because people need to know that that's, you know, especially people that are not as close to this narrative of what it means to be an immigrant and how families differ, even within their own families. Like, I still have a family member, you know, who's undocumented. One of my uncles actually recently got deported, you know, and I have a lot of other uncles who are citizens, cousins who are citizens who now can vote. So it's almost, and it's also, where do I stand, you know, even within my family system, within my Mexican family system, because like, I feel like if I do a job of, you know, making sure that all my family who can vote votes, I feel like I've done my part. I have such a huge family that I, you know, phone banking, forget about it. I can just call my own family and I can make sure that they vote, you know. Never mind. Yes, phone bank, please. Everybody
get make a call, do something.
Yeah, join a phone bank.
Claudia and Diana también, but you also mentioned that your experience as living as an immigrant also sort of attracted you to the project, and I believe that there's a lot of immigrants and illegal immigrants that are in this position where they are living in the U.S. and they are working in the U.S. and they're making a decent amount of money, but they don't have what Diana has now, which is the ability to cross a bridge to be with her physical family and embrace them. So it's this thought of, you know, even if it's a golden cage that you're in, it's still a cage, right?
Yeah, it is. We have similar situations. Like, I was undocumented for many years too, not as many, but for several years as well, and then was able to go back, and it definitely makes a difference, as Diana was saying at the very beginning. Like, just when you travel back and you're there with your people, in the weather of the place you were born, and like the humidity and everything, I feel that's a privilege that we take for granted when we just have it. And definitely, I feel like, I don't know, there is this concept of like being an undocumented person here is always there, like it's traditionally seen as something terrible that can happen to a human being, or like you're suffering so much, and that happens a lot. But I also think that besides that label of being undocumented, there is a lot of joy as well. And I think it also translates to the community, of course, that where you're in, if you have your family around or not, and also the relationship that you have with your family. It kind of like depends on like many things, but I also think that the less we take ourselves as victims and the more we celebrate us, the stronger we are. And I think maybe in my own optimistic self, I feel if we gather that strength that comes from joy and that comes from celebration, we will be able to change things eventually. Because the more we are sure of ourselves and the more we embrace ourselves and the more we celebrate ourselves, the more secure we'll be when there is a moment to push for decisions to be taken, to push for laws to be changed. But if we are always kind of like just believing the news media narrative of like we're victims, if we start believing that, that will make us more less strong and less secure. And I think we need to nurture that joy that we have inside us. So I think this film is more about that through Diana's life, which I think, yeah, it has its bad moments, and we are all have lived here without documents. Most of us, we've gone through a lot of difficult times, but I think we're also gone through joyful times. And I think the way Diana celebrates that, and how she translates it and translate those feelings into her music too, it's a beautiful thing. And I think it's something that we do relate to. And I think that's why a lot of us follow her music, because it translates to that, to the nostalgia, but also to the joy, I think, which is kind of like we live in both places, I think. But I also think that as human beings, we live in those places. Being human and being in this earth, it's a lot of like, it's complex. It's a complex thing.
Absolutely. We have a couple more comments. Ethan says, thank you for sharing your film at San Diego Latino Film Festival.
Yeah,
thank you, Ethan, for stopping by, and thank you, Ethan, for all you do. And then we have another comment here. Maria says, qué orgullo, Claudia. Diana, tu música es increíble.
Ay, gracias.
That's actually my mom that said that. So
la familia, me encanta. Te digo que estamos bien latinos.
Well,
she, I
said but she actually mentioned, because I was sharing that I was going to talk to a filmmaker that was from Medellin, like we are from. And she's heard your music, and she said you reminded her a little bit of Mercedes Sosa, Argentinian singer. Do any other like Latin American singers make part of like your bigger musical influences then?
Oh my gosh, that's such a compliment. I love Mercedes Sosa and what and the music she sang. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm influenced by people whose art was honest and genuine. And
you mentioned Joan Baez in one of the speeches that you were doing that's featured in the thing as well. Like counterculture.
Yeah, like I'm actually quoting her. I know maybe that's not her original quote, but I think a few moments before I spoke in the documentary, she had said, let's get. She gave her speech, and yeah, definitely. I mean, singers that were, Joan Baez is also one of them. Like when she was, backing up and bringing music and beauty to the social justice movements of her times. Or I recently saw this video when Harvey Milk, ¿cómo se llama el activista?
De San Francisco? Yeah, Harvey Milk.
When Milk was, when he was shot, and I think she was the first one to speak at a vigil or at a rally or something that happened. She did not speak. She just stood up and started singing. And so, like, I don't know, like, yeah, my influences are people whose music has been used as a vessel for uplifting and for celebrating and for mourning and for transforming and doing it in an honest, genuine, deep way. And so, sí, la Mercedes Sosa, la Violeta Parra. Mercedes Sosa was not a songwriter, but it almost felt like she wrote those songs because she felt them so much. But anyway, sí, gracias por el cumplido.
From a logistic standpoint, obviously you're going to absorb as much time in your hometown as possible, but the combination of the documentary, your career already sort of burgeoning, and now you have this extra ability to move around and travel. What is that meant for you? Like you ever like, oh, I can go do a concert in Germany, and then you're like, oh, I can't go to Germany, and then you realize, oh, I can go to Germany if I want to. Right?
Sí, totalmente.
Right? How has that expanded your possibilities for your career?
You know, it's funny because now it's like the world is my oyster. ¿Cómo iba esa canción que me compuse? El desierto, la mar y el bosque. The world is my oyster. I think we were in Joshua Tree and we were just, you know, I was high from the desert, from the heat of the desert, and that song came up.
She was singing.
Yeah, see, because now it's like, yeah, I really can go anywhere, and sometimes I forget. But yeah, my dream is to go visit all my musician friends in their you know, in their hometowns in Peru, in Argentina, in Chile, in España, and bring my music there. I don't have these big dreams of being famous. I just have these big dreams of connecting with people and singing, and sharing my music, yeah, with the world, you know, but in a setting that it's, I guess, yeah, I mean, I have friends. I'm so lucky to have friends from all over the place. I can't wait to go to Colombia and sing there. Entonces, yeah, that's my dream.
The irony is that you get a green card and now you can travel the world, and now Americans aren't welcome in anywhere in the world right now.
Bueno, I'm not American yet, right?
Okay.
But no, estoy siendo muy responsable. I'm not really traveling other than coming here. So I'm gonna put off traveling for a little bit, but I'm doing a lot of, you know, it's okay. You know, and again, I feel like as immigrants, we developed muscle for these times. You know, we've experienced this before, not being able to travel, not being able to go and see people that you love. We have the musculature for that, and we're gonna do whatever it takes to combatir este virus and to do whatever we have to help each other. You know, but yeah, I can't travel. It's okay. It'll
well, you got a list of places that you can go to now that, you know, that you couldn't before. We have another comment coming in. I think this might be related to this. Tía mía se saludos desde Santa Ana. A ver cuándo regresas para acá, Diana.
Familia. I have such great friends in Santa Ana. Oh, yeah.
Claudia, as a documentarian, I always sort of, you know, because I've been watching a lot of documentaries, and for me, documentary filmmaking is a fine line between, you know, capturing somebody and then affecting somebody as you capture them, right? Because, you know, I always thought that, you know, the theory is that once you start recording somebody in their natural habitat, they stop acting naturally.
Yeah.
How do you sort of become that fly on the wall? Are you just there so much that they forget about you eventually, or how does that happen? I think Diana wants to say something, but I'll let you answer it first, Claudia.
I think I wasn't raising my hand. I was just like saying,
okay,
like I was not that one that got about the camera. You don't know about it, Claudia.
No. Well, you know what? It also depends on who are you shooting. I think each person is different. I think I've had in front of my camera many people, and every single person reacts differently to the camera. Some people get more used to it. Some others definitely don't like it. Some others love it, and they give you like everything and more. So it's like, it depends. Diana she never got used to it, I think, completely. Probably there were moments, though, that I think, like when you were with your family, and like I think when you were more with other people around, I think it was easier to forget me. But yeah, so that was a little bit challenging. But I also loved, I don't know, there's something I love of that process of people getting used to you, and I don't know, there is like a chemistry that you start building with the person, or like a flow that you start building with this person, that is different than when you're building a friendship or anything, even though like friendships and relationships are growing from this thing of having your camera in front. But I also think there is this other parallel relationship between you, the camera, and the person you're shooting. So I think it's different with everybody. I really love just following the person and letting them be, and me moving around to get what I need to get, instead of like telling people what to do. Unless it's like we're gonna stage something that is like more specific. But in general, I really love just following the person and being as, I don't know, as in the same level of the person per se. Like I don't want to be in any other level, but kind of like have that, if I'm explaining well, but kind of like me swimming the same waters that the person is swimming at the moment. And that also changes day by day with the same person, because we all like, our moods change and everything changes. But I like kind of like to match that when I'm filming.
Match their energy basically, or their pace.
Yeah. Also because it's like it's a vulnerable place for the other person to be in front of the camera. So I really try to make them feel very comfortable with it, even if it's uncomfortable. It's like if you put a camera in front of me, I will be the most awkward person, because it's so weird to have a lens in front of you. So I understand that, but yeah, I don't know. But Diana, what do you have to say about
Diana, were you ever close? Did you guys ever come to a point where it wasn't working that day, or maybe you were like, listen, let's try tomorrow, or just like, did you ever have any of that subject director friction?
Well, the thing is, like, Claudia didn't really, didn't really direct, which I think it's what's great about, and it sort of confirms what she's saying. She really just let me be, and I think that's probably the best way to portray or to tell a story, right? Like I never felt uncomfortable because I was doing something that I didn't want to, do. Although I do have to say, because Claudia and I were friends first, and I'm always like making jokes, and like sometimes, many times I had to say, "Ay, no, don't edítalo, por favor," and like she was always cracking up, and so sometimes I actually thought I should have been a little bit more solemn, like, because I have all these parts of me too, I love humor. Soy del norte, ¿qué quieren que haga? Y de Juárez, no nomás del norte, Juaritos. Entonces, so anyway, humor is a big part of my life, and it's kind of what keeps me, afloat. And so there was a lot of jokes and a lot of laughing, but sometimes, like we needed to be solemn, and it was like hard for me to be, and so yeah, but Claudia was great in that sense of like, she was never like this, I almost think that if just as she says, oh, if I would have been on the other side, I would have been so awkward and blah blah blah. Well, I feel like if I would have been on her, like filming somebody, I'm like like I want to control everything. Like I never felt that sense from her, never. And I think that was beautiful, because then I only had to worry about my own insecurities in front of a camera, or my own like uncomfortable, because it's kind of, a lot of people feel uncomfortable in front of a camera, but it was never because of Claudia. It was more just because in general, like whenever I have to do selfie videos, just know anybody who I've done selfie videos for, know that you've gotten a lot from me, because I'm not like, I'm not so much like into that. And so anyway, yeah, like whatever uncomfortable feeling I got was just from my own sort of, but never from her. It was, and it was. So
beautiful. she never said like, oh, take a bite of that again, but from this angle. No, okay.
No, o sea, if anything, no, actually, no. And I think it's also because, I'm very active and I'm very como hyper, and so like I think, I don't know, I don't think, yeah, we never had anything like that, Claudia, right? Wow. So it was pretty smooth in that sense too. And she also had a lot of time. Maybe if she only had little time, there were some things, she did say like, oh, I want to ask you a few things and stuff, but it was never in a controlling way, which I think was helpful.
Okay. And then I know we have to wrap this up just because there's other QAs happening today, but I do want to, like I said, I'm a filmmaker, not directly affiliated with the film festival, but I do help them out with these QAs every year because I do my own stream. So I would love to speak to you guys a little bit more in depth at it when we get a chance. But Claudia, before I let you guys go, what is the, when you find somebody that you're friends with, her story resonates with you, you start to record her. Obviously once that moment happens, crossing that bridge, you pretty much know, okay, my documentary is I found the natural arc of my story. Was there ever a point where you wanted to keep going with it, or did you just sort of say like, okay, I have to accept that life has given me this arc?
Yes, I want to make a series.
You just want to follow Diana around all day, just.
I want to make a series about the Stupiñán Gameros family because
my mom's family.
Yeah.
Una serie de la vida tuya y de. Mi mami no habla inglés, por eso está muy callada.
Ok, bueno, ¿quiere darle un mensaje a tu madre a ver qué se siente tener a la hija en casa ahora, después de tantos años? ¿Qué es lo que nos quieres decir de cómo te sientes tenerla otra vez ahí al lado tuyo?
¿Cómo te sientes de tenerme al lado tuyo acá en casa? Diles la verdad, ¿no?
No, pues muy contenta, muy feliz, ¿verdad? Porque fueron muchos años de, pues aunque yo de todas maneras iba para allá, pero de disfrutarla aquí en la casa, en lo cotidiano, en mi espacio, es algo muy confortable para mí. Estoy muy feliz.
Oh, está bien. Claudia estaba feliz que todos. Bueno, último comentario aquí nos está tratando de Carlos. Saludos de Anita para ti, para tu mami. Qué hermoso cuadro atrás de ti. Oh. Okay, yeah, that is some nice art. What is the biggest? One last question for you, Dad. What is the biggest difference between when you left Juárez and when you came back? That que te chocó, que te pareció lo más diferente cuando volviste?
My house, the counters were way shorter than when I was here.
You're looking at it.
Los techos. No, that's a joke. I guess. No, something that I really loved, and it almost kind of, it meant a lot to me is when I left Ciudad Juárez. I mainly left because, Ciudad Juárez, there were not a lot of cultural resources or centers or ways or forum, or como se dice, foros, venues, or, and I think I identified myself as an artist even without not knowing it from a very early age. I was always very curious, and I had a very imaginative mind and an artistic mind. And so like something pushed me outside of Juárez, right? And when I left, there wasn't a music school. You couldn't get a music degree here. And coming back, I see this beautiful building of the Departamento de Música, Licenciatura de Música. There's a music school now, like where you can get your bachelor's. So it's a new campus, a music campus. And I know it may not mean a lot for other people, but for me, it was one of the most beautiful changes that I saw, that finally kids had an opportunity to become musicians, and if they wanted to, without leaving their hometown, and people and kids have more access now to instruments. A lot of women. I have a musician friend who tells me there's so many women now playing upright bass, double bass, a lot of string instruments in kids' hands. When I went out and the first times that I came here. So to me, as a musician and as somebody who didn't get to experience that growing up, the infrastructure and the motivation and the funding for music, for me, it just meant the world. And it's something that I cherish, and that I am grateful that the city finally, took action in that direction.
Okay, well, I want to thank you guys very much for showing the film here in San Diego. Gracias, tío. Claudia,
Gracias, Luis. ¡Qué emoción! Un colombiano.
qué emoción, parcerita, de conocerte, ¿no?
No,
Pero just really quick, Claudia, did you get a chance to screen this in front of an audience at any point, or has this all been virtual for you?
It's since we did it, but privately throughout the process of the film, and just right before COVID hit, we did a private screening for people that we wanted to share with, but we never had the opportunity to.
The premiere was a virtual. It was a virtual premiere. Yeah.
Just make sure that when you do a live audience with a theater, that you got a lot of Kleenex, because there's going to be a lot of tears and a lot of clapping at the end of it, because it was a very emotional journey. As somebody who's an immigrant myself and have immigrants in my family, and all about the struggle. Como un colombiano también, director colombiano, me gusta ver talento colombiano detrás de las escenas y haciendo algo y representando a Medellín en una manera positiva, obviamente. And Diana, your music is not necessarily something that I'm accustomed, but I found myself, reacting to it in an emotional way because of the weight that it had behind it. So as an artist, I feel that, you're just putting a lot out there. So I appreciate both of you for the work that put into this and for telling such a personal story and about your journey. So thank you very much for bringing the film to the festival.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Claudita disappeared.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Diana's mamá, por estar aquí. Thank you for commenting. And everybody, okay, all right. Thanks for being part of the festival, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Have a good rest of your night.
Bye.
Bye.